Hello everyone and welcome to our webinar. My name is Magda Sochacka and I'm Director for Channel Partnerships at PCG Academia, and I'll have the pleasure of moderating the webinar today. As we have international guests with us, the whole webinar will be conducted in English. The translation into Polish will be provided in the form of live captions throughout the whole webinar. Please let me now introduce our panelists. With us today we have Juan Ramon Alegret at Blackboard. He is the Vice President for Europe. We also have Peter Hurst from Open Lms. At Open Lms, he is the Territory Manager for Europe, Middle East and Africa. And we also have with us Ishan Kolhatkar, who is the General Manager for UK at Inspera. Ishan has joined us today instead of Kim Walgrave, who was supposed to be with us. Unfortunately, in the end, he couldn't attend. So thank you, Ishan, for being ready to step in and join us last minute. Good to have you all, guys. This is the fourth and last webinar in our Beyond Moodle series organized by PCG Academia. We organized the whole series to talk about challenges that universities face in this bizarre year 2021 and to hopefully inspire universities with possible solutions and responses to those challenges. On the three previous webinars, we have already talked about getting insights from analysis of data coming from platforms like Moodle, on which online learning is now being conducted by universities. We have also talked about accessibility of online content, and we talked about conducting electronic exams in an effective way during pandemic. And today we would like to talk about the perspectives for development of online learning in Poland. And we don't want to stand on the shoulders of giants, so I will ask our panelists about experiences of leading universities from Europe and from the world that Polish universities could possibly draw on. I will also ask our panelists about their own experiences from working closely with universities over this last difficult year, where all the efforts were focused on ensuring learning continuity in the lockdown. We'll also discuss what lessons can be drawn from those experiences and how universities can build better teaching and learning experiences for their teachers and students going forward. So I hope that you'll find this discussion engaging and you'll get some nuggets of inspirations from our discussion today. And let me now turn to our panelists. So as a warm-up, could you please briefly introduce your company, your offering and experience? And Juan, if we could start with you, please give the voice to you now.
Okay, thank you, Magda. Dzień dobry. So, Blackboard, to introduce Blackboard, I will mention that it's a leading EdTech company, so education technology company, with more than 20 years experience and serving around 150 million users, including students, professors, teachers, administration staff, in more than 90 countries, including Poland. As a company, we are mainly focused on the higher education segment, and we partner with some of the most prestigious academic institutions in the globe. Our lemma is to advance learning by delivering a dynamic, personalized user experience fueled by data. And our offering is based on an advanced and integrated education technology platform, designed to bring together the most modern cloud-based learning management system, virtual classrooms, authenticity and accessibility tools, student success and institutional improvement services, content and development, training engagements, and more. All of that infused with analytics to inform continuous improvement. And even though we have, as I understand, the most advanced learning management system for the higher education market, many of our tools and solutions work as well with Moodle and pushing Moodle to the next bar, okay, and extending its capabilities.
Thank you, Juan.
That's a good and short introduction.
Yeah, thank you, Juan, for this introduction. Peter, if you could follow with the introduction of Open Lms.
Absolutely. Good afternoon, everybody. It's a pleasure to be here, and thank you very much for the introduction. So my name is Peter Hurst. I'm the sales lead for EMEA with Open Lms. Open Lms is the world's largest Moodle host. We're actually 6 times bigger than the second largest Moodle host as of the end of last year. So we operate at a scale that's unprecedented in the Moodle market. We offer reliability in terms of hosting and also extensibility in terms of adding value and growing the environment beyond what is possible to do within a managed or self-hosted environment. The LTG group, which Open Lms is part of, is a global enterprise hosted on the London Stock Exchange with content development, with platforms, with analytics, with a whole host of other services and products around the LMS to really add value to it. So in a similar way to Blackboard, we're a real sort of global behemoth in the sector. And it's a real pleasure to be here with you all. And I'm looking forward to learning from the other panelists and also discussing some of what we have to offer. And if one message for the day from me is around evolution rather than revolution, because Moodle is the biggest, most well-used, most extensible, most highly developed system you can possibly use. It's just possible that that it's not configured as effectively as it could be, and that's where we're here to help.
Thank you, Peter. And Ishan, if you could introduce Inspera.
Of course. Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you very much for allowing me to join you at short notice. Kim does send his apologies. My name is Ishan Kolhatkar. I'm the General Manager here at Inspera in the UK. Inspera is an assessment platform that supports your organization's entire examination cycle. So we do everything from planning to designing, delivering, be that remotely or on site, giving feedback and allowing you to mark assessments. It's a tool that's incredibly flexible, that allows you to host your high stakes exams, your coursework, and in fact, if you want to, your formative exams on a platform that is dedicated to examinations. To give you an idea of our scale, in 2020, 2.6 million people submitted their exams through Inspera. That was in 160 different countries around the world. We estimate that we have saved over 91 million pieces of paper. And as well as 3 institutions in Poland, there are other names that you may well have heard of who now use Inspera, which include the University of Oxford, the University of New South Wales in Australia, the University of Oslo in Norway, and we partner with the British Council as well, with a number of other institutions. On a personal note, I joined Inspera just a couple of months ago, but my relationship with them has been over the last 3 years, in fact, because prior to working here, I was at a university in the UK where I spent 2.5 years implementing Inspera and eliminating all of their pen and paper exams by September of last year. So delighted to be here, delighted to answer some questions this afternoon.
Thank you all for those introductions. So Moodle continues to be the most widely used LMS platform by Polish universities. And in this webinar series, we wanted to talk with experts about ways in which universities could enhance and improve their often Moodle-based online learning, hence the name Beyond Moodle for the whole webinar series. So how does the offer of your company tie with Moodle? Do you have a history of cooperation with Moodle or Moodle community? And if we could start with you, Peter, this time.
Thanks very much. Yes, our offer does tie in with Moodle. Our offer is built on Moodle. So all of our customers have the Moodle core, and then they have another set of services and products and capabilities built on top of that. We were actually one of the first, if not the very first, Moodle partner globally, way back in 2005. We've actually been hosting Moodle as a software as a service, so in the cloud, single code base that all of our customers share. We've been doing that since 2008. I'm pretty confident that that's the longest running SaaS LMS in the world. It's certainly the longest running on Moodle. And Open Lms is made of three companies. Open Lms itself, which was the biggest Moodle host and the very first Moodle partner, or one of the very first at least. eThink, which was the 2019 North American Moodle Partner of the Year, and eCreators, which was also the 2019 APAC Partner of the Year and also Global Partner of the Year. So the companies that have come together as part of Open Lms have a rich pedigree of supporting the Moodle project, contributing both via code and financially to the project, and on using and utilizing and building upon the global experience of those who use Moodle. So obviously the Moodle community itself creates amazing plugins and adds huge value. The Moodle core project does the same and maintains and evolves the core. And then we add some sprinklings of extra features and services on top of that. So Moodle is core to what we offer, and it's very important going forwards for us to continue in that light.
Thank you, Peter. And Juan, if you could answer the same question.
Okay, so from the point of view of Blackboard, I will mention first that Open Lms, okay, which is the largest Moodle cloud provider in the world, represented here in this conference by Peter, has been until just 10 months ago Blackboard division. Okay, and during many years, Blackboard has not only been the largest commercial code and innovation contributor to Moodle, but as well, Blackboard has invested in development and in research to fine-tune several of our teaching and learning tools and solutions, such as the Virtual Classroom Collaborate or Blackboard Alive, which is a content accessibility tool, to seamlessly integrate with Moodle. Okay, so raising the bar of the functionality that can be provided. Today, now that Open Lms is an independent company, okay, Blackboard continues investing in development and in research to bring new capabilities into those extensions of Moodle, and we continue collaborating very closely with the Moodle community. So despite not having Moodle, we still work very closely with Moodle providers like Open Lms and bringing solutions that can extend the Moodle capabilities for all the other Moodle customers in the world.
Thank you. And Ishan, how could you tie Inspera with Moodle?
Yeah, absolutely. So Inspera, as I say, is a standalone platform, if that's the way you want to use it. But we have an LTI integration so that you can integrate it with Moodle. You could therefore have your students taking their exams in a familiar environment if you wish, or using the link to get them into Inspera as their digital assessment vehicle. And some of this comes from the way in which you want to present it to your students. Your strategy may well be that you wholly integrated so that the look and feel is exactly the same. Your alternative might be that you want Moodle to be your springboard into that digital assessment and their assessment or representative
Explanation. So I think I wouldn't be unfair if I said Polish universities before the COVID pandemic were quite slow in to embrace online learning on a wider scale. It was mostly a domain of a number of tech-savvy digital enthusiasts that actually carried their classes on Moodle. It wasn't like a part of core university strategy to develop online learning. And well, the pandemic has obviously changed a lot in that respect, and we had to play catch up. And the question is where it goes from here. So having been present on this market for quite a while, how do you predict online learning to develop in Poland? Do you see Poland following the path of other countries? Do you think that maybe the pandemic has leveled things up in a way? So Juan, if you could start this time.
Okay, so thank you. I will not say that Poland is behind, okay? So many other European countries, such as Germany, Austria, France, or Italy, are not at the same, I would say, e-learning maturity level as some countries, like, for example, the US, the UK, or Australia or New Zealand, okay, which maybe are the leading countries in terms of not only adoption of e-learning or edtech platforms. Okay, so they are leading it. And I would like to make also a kind of difference between online learning and using edtech platforms. Okay. However, what my perception is that Poland, as well as some of these other countries like France or Germany, okay, the universities have implemented learning management systems platforms for several years ago. And in many cases, and you mentioned Magda, self-hosted Moodle. Initially with the aim to support teaching generally, and in a few times also to support online programs. Okay, so however, that doesn't mean a digital transformation, okay? So as you mentioned as well, Magda, many of these implementations have not been supported, okay, by the leadership in the universities. This is why when we were impacted by COVID, those more mature countries were able to quickly switch to online training and learning without balancing too much into video conference or virtual classroom tools. But if we look what happened, and I mentioned it's Poland, but as well Germany or Austria, okay, those universities, since they were somehow behind in the adoption of, or really in a true digital transformation, what they did, it's mainly to balance all the courses into virtual classrooms, which is a good tool or a good way, but it's not the best way to balance it. So yes, maybe Poland, it's, if we compare to the rest, well, at least to the main countries in Europe, it's a little bit behind. It's not really so much behind. And I believe there is the opportunity to quickly catch up.
Thank you, Juan. And Peter, what's your perspective on that?
We have a relatively small presence in Poland, so my understanding of the market is based on obviously talking to you as our partner, PCG Academia and Magda specifically. So and as Juan says, my understanding of the market there is that it's very similar to many other countries. Some of the ways that we can perhaps think about how online learning will develop is unbundling qualifications. So one of the things that happened, as Juan said, at the sort of inception of online learning, was that somebody, with some technical expertise, would create a Moodle environment and use it for their own, to augment their own teaching and learning. So they would offer a blended model where they were doing face-to-face tuition through lectures and in the classroom, and then they would be offering some blended, perhaps some flipped learning or some other resources that the students could access online with perhaps some assessment as well. And over the years, that's organically developed, and more people within the institution now have access to that Moodle environment and are now using it. They're perhaps tweaking it all of the time. Each is working in a silo. I mean, that's a fairly typical model of how Moodle use develops in an institution, and how we think that that'll develop is universities will offer both blended face-to-face and wholly online tuition, and the wholly online tuition will be an unbundled version of what is available within the classroom. So when you start a course, it'll be less clear exactly where exactly the route you'll take through it, because you'll study something, you'll then move on to get other grades and awards and certifications and competencies from other modules, and you'll be able to pick and choose what you're interested in. And that only works really effectively when you have very rigorous control over how courses are templated, created, managed. You have rules about how they're structured, and you signpost users to get from one place to another within the environment. So it requires central management to really get tight on it. And when you're self-hosting, or when you're hosting with a managed hosting provider, a lot of the time spent within the environment is focused on upgrades, on managing performance, on reliability, on plugins, on testing, on managing the environment rather than managing the learning. And that's where we think we can really add value in your market, is around taking a lot of that headache away, so that the focus of the people within the institution is on the most important thing, which is teaching and learning. And that's just in a nutshell pretty much all of our customers follow that same sort of path, and I don't see why things would be particularly different in Poland.
Thank you, Peter. And Ishan, what's your perspective? What do you think? How it's gonna play out?
Yeah, I don't think that Poland is that far behind other countries in the way that they're choosing to assess and use digital tools to do so. I think the market maturity that we'll see in Poland, across Europe, across the world, is people realizing that assessment often gets left behind. It's often an afterthought. It's often the bit that is cobbled together with the tools that you've got at the moment, rather than being given that dedicated space for students to perform in the best way possible. I think that the other way in which the world will change is that rather than just digitizing what you've currently got by putting it on your LMS or using it in a very simple way on a platform like ours, is that people will realize that there are great opportunities with digital assessment, that by having digital tools available to you, you can generate far more authentic assessments by allowing your students to do what you anticipate they'll do when they leave the university or the institution that they're at. I mean, it still is moderately surprising to me, if not really quite surprising, that in so many parts of the world, not just Poland, across the world, we spend so much time telling our students that when you leave here, you're going to enter the world of work. You've got to be digitally literate. You've got to be tech savvy. And oh, by the way, before you do that, we're going to sit you in a room in silence for 3 hours with a pen and paper and ask you to write pages and pages of information, something that they're just not going to do thereafter. So I think the change we'll see is that people will embrace what they're able to do with these digital tools. And using something like an assessment platform means that in the same way that you use an LMS for its purpose, the learning, you use an assessment platform for its purpose, which is assessing your students.
Thank you, Ishan, for this interesting perspective. So I would like to go into this kind of standing on the shoulders of giant part. And while you said that, according to you, Poland is not very far behind, definitely Poland can use experiences of universities that already have gone through digital transformation. So where could Polish universities get the inspiration from? Could you share any stories of successful digital transformation that you've observed, that you've helped as a company? And can you talk about how we can perhaps use that going forward to build on those
I think I'm starting on that one.
Yes.
Yeah.
So,
yeah, no problem.
please.
So digital transformation is always interesting language, and we use it internally. We use it on our marketing websites. We talk about it in webinars. Transformation sounds like a process which has a beginning and has an end. And in actual fact, I mean, e-learning develops so quickly. Teaching and learning develops so quickly. Government policy changes, funding changes, the makeup of your class changes quickly. So digital transformation, I would say, is something that happens almost continuously, and various influences come to affect it. So, in terms of inspiration, we've got loads of customers with lots of different stories. The ones that work really, really effectively are those that have central buy-in. So people at the top understand the importance of diversifying the way teaching and learning happens within an institution, so that it's not what Ishan just described there, where you have PDFs or PowerPoints uploaded to the site. They sit, they're assessed, you move on from them. It's a combination of dynamic formative assessment, of competencies, of digital backpacks that allow you to take qualifications from one place to another, from one course to another, and outside of learning within an institution as well. So you take it to the workplace with you. It's something that has that top-down approach where the central management team really buy into it, but it also has ground-up support where staff feel enabled, trained, and excited about the prospect of using the systems that they have at their disposal. And digital transformation needs both of those things. It also needs really effective tools to allow that to happen. So those that have a great user interface and an accessible design, so that there is a universal design for learning approach where all can make use of them, but also dynamic, interesting content developed within them. So you can have the best tools in the world, but if your team aren't creating amazing resources to go in them, then the learning sort of stops. So you need to have tools, you need to have systems, you need to have enthusiasm, and you need to have buy-in from all areas within the institution. And there's no start and stop to that sort of process. It's a dynamic process that evolves all of the time, and so I don't think that it's we need to start a digital transformation tomorrow. You're in one now. You've been doing one for the past 30 odd years, where we've been through Commodore 64s, BBC computers, and all sorts in between. So you get inspiration all around you. I'm not sure that one particular story from one particular institution is going to be all that relevant. I think that within your own institution you can build that transformation and continue it.
Thank you, Peter, for this perspective. And Juan, do you have any stories that you would like to share and you think might be an inspiration for Polish universities?
Well, I do have, but I will like to start, saying that each university or business school, it's different, okay? So there are not two that are the same, okay? And then their digital transformation strategy should as well be different, okay? There are, however, I believe, some guidelines that we should have in mind, okay? And that have been a good recipe for success. The first one is to have the proper leadership support, okay? So adding a proper tech platform or transformation, it's not something from the IT department or just from a few academicians, okay? It must have really the leadership support, in this case, from the rector and the whole executive team in a university, okay? So the second will be this institutional commitment, okay? It's not something from just one department. It needs to be the whole institution with this full commitment. They need as well robust and resilient infrastructures, okay? And such those that we provide, or Open Lms provides, or Inspera is providing, okay? But as well a proper, effective and available support for the academics and as well for the student population, with as well evidence based decision making and continuous improvement. Okay, so it's not just digitizing the teaching and learning process. What they need to aim is to get information to help them to improve. All that, okay, needs to be integrated with some other key functions in the institution. And to achieve that, what the universities can do is to partner maybe with already existing or universities that have already started this path into the digital transformation and have been successful, or rely or request the support from companies such the ones we are represented here or as PCG. Okay, I have maybe many examples. Maybe I'm quite found from one which is a very small university. I'm from Spain, okay, and there is a very small university, and I mentioned this one because I was with them recently. It's Universidad Católica de Ávila. Ávila is a small village or city, sorry, not far from Madrid. So this university, it's a private one, and they had a very tough competition from all the universities that are at 100 kilometers from Ávila that are in Madrid, okay, where they have big universities, private, public, and some of the best as well business schools, okay. So they were facing a very tough competition. The university was very close to disappear, at the verge of disappearing some years ago. But then the leadership took the decision that they need to move forward, and the only way to move forward for this university, they identified that this digital transformation was mandatory. Okay, that's the only way to go forward. In this case, they partner with a few companies, but as well with a top consulting company to define a plan and to execute it. Today, I can say that after a few years, this university is not only at the verge of disappearing, really, they are growing, they are getting more and more programs, they are getting more and more students, not only local students, but as well they are capturing students from the rest of Spain and from Latin America. Okay, so their decision and the way they really from top down, they approach digital transformation has helped them really to grow and to be today very important. And just to finish, I will mention that digital transformation, it's not a destination, okay? It needs to be a path. It's not I say, I invest for 2 years in digital transformation. No, that needs to be something that a university or a higher education institution needs to keep pushing, investing, researching, implementing, collaborating, and partnering in order to keep really at the same pace as the industry is moving around the globe.
Thank you, Juan, for this interesting perspective. And Ishan, what are your thoughts on this?
Well, I mean, unsurprisingly, I agree with everything that's been said so far. Digital transformation is not something that's either quick or simple. I think it's worth considering that there is, as has been alluded to so far, there's a huge amount of change management involved in this with the people involved, and accepting, I think in particular with digital, that people's digital literacy has improved or stagnated for that matter at very different rates. And so as part of this, you may well realize that what you have to do is improve the digital literacy of your staff, of your faculty, of your students, to make sure that they can take advantage of these great pieces of technology that you're going to introduce. I think the one thing I'd add in terms of my perspective and what I've seen, taking both the personal journey that I went on at my previous institution, and also considering what's been said by Juan and Peter, is that there's a super user community, I think, that are always really important. Yes, absolutely, you need that buy-in from the top to make sure that it happens, but you need to almost propagate through your institution these super users in various different roles, be they faculty, be they administrators, who not only understand the technology that you're using, they understand how to use it, but they also understand the purpose behind why you have chosen to do so, because they are your evangelists that will help make sure that the entire student, the entire faculty body, the entirety of your administrators will ultimately get to this goal. I think the only other point I'd want to add is look at those goals and perhaps be less concerned about the steps to them. So if we take digital assessment as a specific example, of course what you want is for people to mark on screen so that your results are there and the feedback's there. You might find that what you need to do in order to get people there is to say, if you want to print all of this out in your own time, at your own cost, and mark it traditionally and then put your marks back in for the first couple of rounds, do it. That's fine. I'm not going to stop you doing that. Ultimately, my goal is that at the end of the marking round, all the data's in there. How you get there is a matter for you, because often people have to see that their old way of doing things, which they almost norm reference as perfection, isn't, and that there's a quicker and better way of doing it. Just telling them that won't necessarily work. They've got to see it for themselves. So your super users and being less concerned about that journey, but the end state being the important point, is, I think, what you can take away from this and learn from.
Thank you, Yushin. So I wanted to ask you now about your experiences of working with universities over the last year, and what's your experience from that? You know, helping to ensure continuity of learning during the pandemic, and also what are the leading universities in the world looking at now? Has the pandemic actually changed their perspective and changed the strategies? So here we could, if we could start with you, Yushin.
Sure. I think that what the leading universities have had to do is examine what they've done, because they've had the great flexibility pre-pandemic to do whatever they like, with what they have to do now and what they might then do in the future. So, we go back to the point about the norm in so many parts of the world being terminal exams as at least some part of a module, if not all of it, in silence, invigilated in an exam hall. And that, of course, was your way of ensuring some sort of authenticity. There are some who've decided, actually, well, our exams have to work in that way. So they've looked at remote proctoring, and they've discovered, actually, that whilst that might save you the cost of buildings, it might save you the cost of people, it's not without its own costs. You have the cost of proctoring, you have the time to proctor, you have a whole host of new challenges, because the environment that the person is in is not one that you can wholly control. And I think what the leading universities are doing is saying, okay, well, this is an opportunity to re-examine again what the goal is and how we get there. If what we want to ensure is that it's this person taking the exam, and that we want to ensure that they've only accessed certain materials, do we have to just run to remote proctor them? Can we actually think about the content of our assessment? What is it that we're trying to assess? What would we assess if we had great flexibility? What would we do if we could use a computer? So I think the leading universities are not just taking what they've got and making it fit, in some cases well, in some cases awkwardly, with technology, but actually really re-examining what they want to do, and then seeing in this new world how they can do it. And I think that the ones who will succeed are the ones who don't see that as short term, but are actually saying, no, hang on, even without the pandemic, isn't this a better way of doing things? Isn't this what we should do? And really re-examining that. The pandemic has had, let's not minimize it, it's had an awful human cost worldwide. And we mustn't forget that for a moment. If we do take some comfort out of it, it will be that the leading organizations, be they universities or anyone else, will use this as a chance to re-examine what they do. And that for the future and not a short-termism.
Thank you, Yushin. Before I ask the same question to you, Juan, I would like to remind our guests that actually our chat is open, so please feel free to ask us questions. We'll gladly take them at the end of the webinar. So if you have any questions to our panelists, please ask those on the chat. So Juan, if you can share your perspective on what leading universities are doing and what are kind of the lessons learned from this difficult time we are in, like the pandemic.
Okay, I will start saying that again, that the way that leading universities faced the pandemic was completely different from the way that I would say non-leading universities faced it. Okay, so those that are leading were better prepared, and they were able to balance to online without being really a nightmare. Those that were having, yes, an LMS and a few tools over there, but not properly deployed in the university without what I mentioned, is support from the top down, had to quickly find their way. And in the big majority of the cases, they balanced towards online classes, okay? Increasing as well, maybe the usage of the LMSs such as Moodle, but then struggling in many cases, for example, with the capacity of these platforms because they were self-hosted, not properly dimensioned, and when they were going to online exams, that in many cases was a chaos. Okay, so right now, looking at the future, there's like three main, I would say, strategies that the universities are moving. Okay, those that are more behind, they are thinking in restoring. Okay, so to go back, okay, to the old face-to-face type of teaching and learning. Okay, without understanding that edtech platforms really are even necessary on the face-to-face teaching or tuition, the same way as when I go to a bank. Okay, if I go physically to a bank office, it's not just someone I have in front that takes a paper and looks at the numbers and he will withdraw or not money from my bank account using a pen and a paper. No? The whole process is digitized. Okay, so the less developed universities are thinking in going back. Okay, the medium one are thinking at least in evolving. Okay, in trying to at least adapt to the new normal. Okay, so we know that after COVID, we are never really going to go back to the same type of environment. So they try to imagine a new normal, sometimes more like the old normal than the new. Okay, but then those leading universities that in many cases have been those that were better prepared, they understood that this pandemic has been a real opportunity to transform, or at least to accelerate their existing digital transformation. And they are focused in redefining the institution, its teaching and learning strategy, how they are going to deal with the students, how they are going to capture more students, how they can improve in different and multiple points. Okay, so those are like the main three approaches that universities have. Okay. I would like to see more and more universities into this into this transformation. Okay, so any university can today move to this transformation and start this transformation. The good thing about technology and the platforms that both Open Lms representing, Inspera is representing, or Blackboard with our solutions we represent, is that those solutions being able to be on the cloud, really we are democratizing the access to this functionality. So a university in Poland can do the same things really as the most prestigious university in the US or the UK or Australia or China, okay? As a university maybe in the middle of Africa can do as well the same, okay? So technology really is democratizing the access. So the digital transformation, the only stopper, it's the proper university itself. There's no barriers to do this digital transformation.
Thank you, Juan. And Peter, what's your thoughts? What are your thoughts on this? Do you agree with Juan?
Yes.
That's the short answer.
I think you probably might need more than that. Yeah, I do totally agree with that. I was just thinking back, and I was just in the background there looking up an article that I posted a month or so ago about digital transformation in the context of COVID. And there's a really interesting, because we're all interested in academia and learning. I would advise you, if you don't already know about this, to have a little look at the Dunning-Kruger Effect. So it's a piece of research done that plots competency and confidence on an XY graph, and you would think that as competence increases, so does confidence, but it's actually quite a non-linear sort of way of plotting that. So initially there's high levels of confidence when competence is relatively low, and it gets up to this peak that they call Mount Stupid, which feels quite offensive, and we can all be on this graph at different places for different things that we're talking about, but generally your confidence is sort of sky high even when your competence is relatively low, and then something happens that just shakes your confidence completely, and you drop down into this valley of despair. So your competence is increasing, you're learning more about something, but your confidence has dropped right down. So you're in this valley of despair, and then as your competence and confidence increase from that point onwards, it's called the slope of enlightenment, and that's where I think most institutions are at the moment in the context of e-learning. So whether they where they were on that Mount Stupid at the very beginning of COVID, they've sort of slumped down and thought, jeepers, we've got a big problem here. And then they're on the way up the slope of enlightenment to sort of improving, and then at the top you reach this plateau of sustainability, which is you're very confident and you're very competent, and things are sort of going smoothly. And I just thought I would share that bit of interesting thing for you. In terms of leading universities around the world, the one thing that really strikes me when I speak to them is the degree in which they have consistency and structure surrounding e-learning. So they have policies from the top that are embedded in the middle and acted upon at the bottom, and so that level of consistency throughout. So you could speak to anybody in the institution who understands their policies on e-learning. I think that they're the most successful institutions. So whether that's led by MOOCs and short courses as a sort of marketing and entry tool to the institution, or whether it's unbundling qualifications, as I was discussing earlier, or just down to the way that content is the architecture of content within a course. Looking at things like proctoring and the professionalism that's applied to online assessment is another way that's exemplified. But have a little look at that effect and consider where you are on that and where you want to get to. Yeah.
Thank you. I think it was a very interesting way of putting things, and I do agree with that perspective. It's about everything that we do. It's pretty much like first we can do this, but then once you start to get into a bit deeper into the forest, you actually realize that there are so many things still to do. So I think that's the kind of natural way we operate. We've talked about this digital transformation in like strategic terms, but if you could maybe just imagine a university that was less than more digitized before pandemic, then this university had to make huge effort to kind of be able to provide continuity of learning in the pandemic. And what are kind of like 3 bullet points as actionable items that this university should be doing going forward? Like, let's think about pandemic. Hopefully at some point we're gonna get through this, and so how Polish universities should go forward. Juan mentioned that there is no going back to the way things were, but how to actually use those experiences from pandemic to build better teaching and learning experiences for teaching and for teachers and students. So Peter, if you could comment on this.
Yeah, I was just frantically looking in the background there. I think it was Amazon published today somebody published today that there's no more 9 to 5, that all of their employees, are free to work whatever hours they think works best for them to fit around their life. And, getting through this pandemic and then returning back to normal just isn't going to happen. The rate at which we adopt change happens to us, and positive behavior comes from it, and the rate at which we sort of adopt that and that becomes the new norm is determined by a whole host of factors, things that your own beliefs and your institution, what's being forced down on you as well. In terms of, I don't know, key elements of that strategy and thought process around it, we've spoke about quite a lot of this already, but that structure and consistency, unbundling qualifications to mean that people can truly have democratized learning, looking at assessment within content. So I think that one of the key determinants of really high quality learning is that instead of having read this, watch this, and then a separate they're all separate activities, and then there's an activity answer these questions. So a typical module within Moodle might look like some PowerPoints, some PDFs, and perhaps an audio recording, and then a quiz to do that summative assessment, or whether it's formative assessment within a larger qualification. It tends to sort of follow that format. So information, discussion and analysis, and then test. And one of the things that we're seeing, particularly with how well H5P has now been integrated within Moodle, is assessment being continuous and being during content. So I really love the interactive video elements of H5P, and use that every time I demo Moodle, every time I talk about e-learning. I always go and create videos for whoever the institution is, just show how quickly you can add some questions within content and make it a little bit more engaging at the time. So we've all been on those sort of courses. Usually it's actually interesting, I work for a really forward-thinking company, but a lot of our health and safety training, for example, or anti-money laundering or anti-bribery courses are maintained by third-party companies who create content, and we buy it in, and we all go through a process of taking part in it. But I always go and check. First of all, one of the things I check is, do I have to read all of that, or can I just click the arrow to move on? And if I can just click the arrow to move on, you do, don't you? A 3-hour course takes 15 minutes. You click through it, don't really read anything, and answer the questions at the end. And courses where they're designed like that are just so ineffective now for modern learners. So whatever the perspective of the academics creating it, or the content designers creating it, if the learner is reasonably digital savvy, they can see ways around actually having to read it and think about it. And if they can just click through, get to the end, fill in the assessment and pass it, what's the point in learning the content within it, unless you're very motivated? So leading institutions, I think, are considering the digital competency of their learners possibly more than the digital competency of their academics in their templating of courses and their thoughts about digital transformation.
Thank you, Peter. Ishan, if you could comment, and I'm conscious of time, we have like 6 minutes left, so if you could please, if your responses could be a bit more concise, then I would be grateful.
Sorry.
Sure. Yeah, I mean, I agree with everything, again, that's been said by Peter. I think that the other area in which people really do need to concentrate is a slight repetition of my previous answer. It's in those basic skills that people have, and not assuming that everyone does, and so also not assuming that every young person has those skills. I have a 14-year-old child who is very adept at using his phone and his iPad for his own purposes. Does that necessarily mean that he has advanced skills using Microsoft Word, or would necessarily know how to manipulate a PDF? No, not necessarily so. So don't assume that people have those skills. If they don't have that, it is the same as giving somebody a book if they can't read. The book might be the most informative book in the world, but if you can't read the words on the page, it means nothing to you. So I think that would be, as a short answer, would be my really important point here, that digital transformation requires ensuring that the users can actually use this great transformation you're putting in front of them.
No, it's not about technology, and technology is really a tool, but it's a tool in hands of people. So it's about people, and it's about right processes that kind of make this technology work. And it's not just about implementing technology. And yes, we have a success. It's more about consistent and coherent approach to the transformation. And Juan, if you could share your perspective.
Well, I believe I mentioned many of those points already. Maybe I will add a link to what you just mentioned, Magda. Okay, so the technology is there. So I believe to move forward in many cases, and I mentioned it's leadership support, institutional commitment, and others. But really, I missed, and it's linked with this. It's what we need. It's a serious as well professional development program for many of the faculty. Okay, so that's some of the things we perceived. Okay, institutions that quickly moved to using IT tools for teaching and learning had sometimes resistance. In some other, really, it's the right skills from some of the faculty in order to take all the advantage out of these tools. Okay, so that's something that maybe we need to focus and to focus more, because as a French philosopher said many years ago, science without consciousness, it's just a mistake. Okay, it will ruin us. Okay, so in this case, if we just add technology without for the sake of technology, without really having a proper program, a proper strategy, and proper training and development for everyone in a higher education institution, is not going to give us the results we are expecting.
Thank you, Juan. Yeah, we have like 3 minutes, so really short responses, please, to the last question. So all of your companies are present on the Polish market through cooperation of PCG Academia. And could you share with the audience how can your company support the Polish universities in their digital transformation? What do you have to offer for Polish universities? And Juan, if you could start, perhaps.
Okay, so I would say first contact us or contact PCG, and then we will go and help and support. We've engaged starting with several universities already, and I believe we've helped some of universities here in Poland already to face this pandemic and to bring solutions. We are right now open, okay, so for offering this advice and the partnership in order to move forward or to start this path into the digital transformation. Okay, so either contact us, contact PCG, who is our representative, and we will be eager to start discussing about your plans, about your pains, about your strategy, and help them and help you to be successful. Okay, so raising the bar. We have a lot of experience. We partner, as I mentioned, with many thousands of universities across the globe. And this experience and expertise, it's something that we offer and can help you to do it, I would say, more safer than engaging by your own.
Thank you, Juan. And Peter, could you just briefly say what Open LMS can offer to Polish universities?
Yeah, much the same as Juan said. So we can help with hosting if that's what you need. If you would like to look at outsourcing your Moodle and concentrating more on teaching and learning rather than on managing a tool, Moodle's a bit like a puppy where it's free to start with, but you have to feed it, train it, you have to look after it, you have to give it a good home, and we're hopefully a safe pair of hands to help do that. But also if it's to do with if what you're interested in is more around staff development or around extra tools to sit around Moodle to enhance what you're already doing, delighted to have conversations via PCG with you about that, and wish you the very best for the future. It's a tough time for everyone, and hopefully we all come out of this safe and happy and delivering great quality education.
Thank you, Peter. And Ishan, could you say how Inspera can help Polish universities in this digital transformation?
Yeah, absolutely. What we can offer you is a flexible, secure, and stable assessment platform that allows you to really put the best assessments on for your students, be they anything from open book all the way to fully proctored by camera, screen, and microphone, in a tool where you have that great flexibility, that you can deliver those great assessments to your students, and you can take advantage, and so can they, of all the great teaching and learning that's taken place on their other platforms to show and for them to shine and to perform their very best. And we'd be delighted to talk to you through PCG with any questions that you have.
Thank you so much. Yes, indeed. Please contact us, and I direct that message to the audience if you found this webinar interesting, if you think that we can support your university in your efforts. Thank you, Juan, Peter, and Ishan for this insightful discussion and sharing your perspectives with us. And we will be happy to stay in touch with you. And I do hope that this webinar was interesting to our audience as well, and you've managed to get some inspiration from our guests. We'll post the recording of this webinar on our website in a few days, so in case you would like to share it with your colleagues, it will be there. I'm afraid that we don't have time for more questions, so I think we'll end here. So thank you so much again for being here with us today, and goodbye.